Gentlemen,
We must kill Superman.
no, seriously. We must find a new sitcom to promote as the next big thing.
Why?
Well, first we had Friends and that 70s show, and now that they've wrapped up How I Met Your Mother, we gotta find a new vehicle to hit the same demographic. Commercially speaking, of course.
Of course.
Yes, but 2.5 men at work and 2 broke new girls just ain't gonna cut it.
A new sitcom. Wouldn't that take too long?
Well, it doesn't have to be like new. Just currently running and not going off the air anytime soon.
What do you suggest?
Gentlemen, let's
Get dangerous.
no analytical.
Anal.
Seriously? Hi, I'm Mike Dane, crawling into my subcultural semi-corner to view The Big Bang Theory. No, not the philosophical scientific discussion, but rather the situation-based comedic TV show being cooked up by the man behind the vanity cards, Chuck Lorre and his various cohorts, having had earlier successes with shows such as Dharma and Greg and 2.5 Men. This particular show stars John Galecki and Jim Parsons as 2 lovable geeks, one more difficult than the other, living across the hall from a cute blonde played by Kaylee Cuoco. Simon Helberg and Kunal Nayyar as their friends rounds it all out with later additions of Melissa Roth and Miriam Bjerlik. Apologies if pronounced wrong. Nerds. Throughout the history of mankind, they've been outcast from the rest of society, if not practically, then certainly culturally. Their social shortcomings and physical awkwardness, be it tall and skinny or short and chubby, taking interest in subject matters that seems trivial or incomprehensible to the rest of the immediate surrounding world, and therefore gets ridiculed and even bullied by the so-called popular girls and sports jocks.
Most nerds are shy, ordinary-looking types with no interest in physical activities.
Think fast!
But what they lack in physical prowess, they make up in brains. Tell me, who writes all the best-selling books? Nerds. Who makes all the top-grossing movies? Nerds. Who designs computer programs so complex that only they can use them? Nerds. And who run for high public office? No one but nerds. Without nerds to lead the way, the governments of the world will stumble.
Hold on there, Sparky. You don't know what you're doing. What about the downside of being a nerd?
What downside?
Like bad skin, for instance. An unnatural attraction to pocket protection. And worst of all the cute girls will want to just be friends.
No, that's not true, is it?
Steph?
You're such a nice guy. Why spoil our special friendship?
No!
Even though the aforementioned geeks contribute considerably to the community at large. And before anyone asks, no, I haven't seen those other shows. For all I know, they might be good. I'm just tired of everybody claiming those are getting it right. But after all, where would we be without the various advances of science and even our industry of entertainment? Pretty fucking nowhere. So it stands to reason that we couldn't keep him completely out of the loop, and thus they've appeared in many media, including this particular show of today's discussion. But what seems to be the problems which so many people apparently have with it? Well, for starters, I suppose it's what other sitcoms could often get accused of. The laugh track, the racism, the misogynism, and so on and so on. You know, the usual prejudices. However, is it really as bad as it's being claimed to be, other than its acronym sounding like a sandwich? Let's take a closer look. I mean, sure enough, like so many other things before it, it does seem to start out rather simple, but man does it turn out to become so much more than that. Now, for a show about nerds, it stands to reason that it would inevitably be somewhat sketchy of its portrayal as such, and that fact has sparked up quite a discussion online about that accuracy, or rather lack thereof. You know, kinda like how Real Doctors doesn't think they do it right on Scrubs, Grey's Anatomy, ER, etc. Not to mention all those NCI something or other cops. It's rather a paradox that nerds online skewer this show for not being nerdy enough. or the fact that it's just flat out making fun of all of us who's being into nerd culture. And to all those uptight, whiny little bitches, I'll just say this little piece. Get the fuck over yourselves. You really can't see just how ridiculous what we're doing actually is, caring this much about people who never existed, doing stuff that never happened. Now honestly, don't get me wrong. I too can be as wildly enthusiastic about whatever I happen to like. And the artist in me do still believe in a higher purpose of it all. But at the same time, the parodist realist in me can also see that it is kinda silly. So read your mangas and play your magic cards. Just have room for a bit of self-irony about it. It's also kind of the same thing with the alleged racism and misogynism of the show. Yeah, it can seem a weak writing excuse that the minorities are making fun of themselves just to be politically correct. But when it all comes down to it, we should all be aware of ourselves and have a sense of good humor and nature about it, despite gender, race, creed, or ethnicity. While it can be a difficult walk, there's a fine line between a little joke and this. Yeah, I know, playing the Nazi card, how original. And by the way, the whole discussion of which of the girls is hotter, why not all three? Besides, like any of you guys out there would have turned any of them down given the chance. Now, the other end of the criticism does come down to the introduction of the girlfriends, that these should never have become a recurring element and the show should have just stayed like it was. Yeah, you know how boring that would have been? Things change. It would need to evolve if it were to keep going on like it has, and as such, it becomes quite a coming-of-age type of story, on par with Chuck, like Spider-Man is for teens and this is for 20-somethings. And when these changes are starting to affect Sheldon, it gets, rather realistic. Speaking as a confirmed autist Asperger myself, I actually don't find this offensive. Now, I might not have it so bad, but I know people who kinda am, and as such, I can pretty much believe this. Sure, he seemed like a caricature before, and I've been wondering if it were at all possible to portray these kind of people without exaggerating for emphasis, but this does it pretty well, I think. And it's not like they're completely incompetent either. These are highly skilled scientists. Sure, they might take a verbal jab at each other, but then again, that's what friends do, right? Even Penny seems to have it pretty much together in her chosen line of work, whether it's as a waitress at the Cheesecake Factory, a pharmaceutical sales rep, or as an aspiring actress, despite Sheldon's claims to the contrary.
When I was a very young girl, when I was 16 years old, I made the discovery. Love. All at once, much, much too completely. It was like you suddenly turned a blinding light on something that had always been half a shadow. That's how it struck the world for me. But I was unlucky, deluded.
She's remarkable. She really is. Our Penny's a star. How can she remember all those lines? But as a waitress, she can't remember no tomato on my hamburger.
But even he can't help get affected by her skills. Yeah, it looks weird, but again, drawing from my own experiences, this is what real actors do when they start out. And you know what? I don't care which actor you adore, Internet, how much they make or how critically acclaimed they are. If the person hasn't tried doing this at some point in his or her career, then it's not a real actor. There, I said it. Now, at the risk of stabbing my own arguments in the foot, if you really want to point out some sad existences in this show, look no further than the supporting cast. Sure, Will Wheaton and Leslie might have it pretty well together, but as for the rest, Kripke's got that pesky speech impediment, but that's about it. By the way, is that how the actor really talks, or was it a creative decision from himself or the director? But then there's Stu.
Stewart is taller, artistic, self-employed, and most significantly, he gets 45% off comic books.
Yeah, despite Sheldon's claims, this guy really isn't doing too good now, is he? Their own veritable Barney. No, the other one. No, the other one. Yes, that one. He just ends up as Raj's little bitch. Well, other little bitch. But thanks to the Wolowitzes, he lands back on his feet again. Oh, and by the way again, Raj just doesn't get a proper shot with the ladies either, now does he? I for one thought he'd make a cute couple with the gooch. Well, better than this guy.
If it happens again, I will wait in my SUV. Blast me some speed metal. 5.1 surround sound, heavy on the bass. And someone will be getting mowed down.
Which is crazy.
But now that you have a girlfriend, it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Just too bad they had to make her creepy. It's Fez and Caroline all over again. And also, Howard's mom. Just like Penny have had commitment issues, Mrs. Wolowitz couldn't seem to let go. That's really sad when you think about it, but also very human. So now Howard can finally become a mature man. So it does really well in portraying how stuff works out. For some it takes longer than others, and for somebody else curveballs keeps getting thrown at you. But then, if I think this show's so good, is there a sitcom I don't like? Kind of, actually. And do you want to know what I think is the worst sitcom ever? Mike and Molly. Ironically also by Chuck Lorre. Now, admittedly, I haven't seen much of it, but as such, won't go too much into detail about it. This is just my impressions of the bits I have seen. And it's not even all that bad, which is kind of the problem. Let me clarify. It just seems a little too cute, playing it a bit too safe. Yeah, it's lame that the show business seems to think there can only be two kind of people, hot or fat. Geez, might as well animate this show and call the characters Flavio and Marita.
I hope the lasagna's okay. It's all fat-free. I use 3 different types of cheeses and diced up fresh tomatoes and garlic for the sauce.
It's fine.
Again, I could be wrong, and I kinda hope so. Please prove me wrong. But I really don't see any depth other than at most them trying to be a couple. But a sitcom needs a bit more than that. It kinda needs characters like Sheldon Cooper, Barney Stinson and Charlie Harper, doesn't it? The type that are so extreme yet can still get away with doing stuff which we all wish we could as well, and then learn to deal with their issues, no matter how long a road they must take. In the end, I guess it all comes down to a matter of balance. If the characters are too perfect, there's nothing to grow from, but if they never grow, it becomes stagnant, and they can't all be like Homer Simpson.
Marge, my friend, I haven't learned a thing.
So it might not always be funny, but it can still be very entertaining. Now if you'll excuse me.
What are you doing here? Wanna play? My mom bought me a new game station.
No, I quit that life. I'm a hardcore rapper now.
One of us.
No, I'm not one of you anymore. I'm not.